So a few weeks ago, I watched a great video from Coney, where he was looking for the strangest fighting game character. It was a really fun watch. But in that video, he specifically disallowed Rivals Workshop characters, which, makes sense. In a game where anyone can make anything, it's not quite the same as official characters that people pay for. But that did get me thinking, what are the weirdest Rivals Workshop characters? So on my community tab, I asked you all what you thought the weirdest characters were, and got a lot of interesting responses. So join me as we go through all of these crazy characters. Before I get into the bulk of these, I do want to get a few quick ones out of the way. A lot of weird characters are weird just because they're based on something weird. The hills from Super Mario World, the definitive edition of the old man that blocks your path in Pokemon, an evil cheese wheel made from the abyss, so on and so forth. While all of these are strange, their concept is about where the strangeness ends. A lot of these characters are fairly simple other than that. In a weird way, this makes Mario Pissing 2 stand out quite a bit, because the character has some serious polish and fleshed out mechanics. Nothing too insane, but there's a good bit of stage control synergy. It's just insane that someone put effort not only to make Mario Pissing, but to make a sequel with just even more stuff. There's also a handful of characters that have one or two funny things about them, but don't really have enough to be a weird character. Cereal Guy, for example, is stuck with a table and chair and thus has the slowest ground movement in the game. Chair Virgil does too, but at least Devil Trigger circumvents that. With Cereal Guy, you don't even get that. With those out of the way, I wanted to bring up one more character before we get to the main list, and this is my character to beat. Nobody suggested this character, but I think they're up there as one of the craziest, so let me know if you think this is the craziest one, or the other characters on the list beat me. Anyway, this is Roxey Aoreolem, and if you look at this character's HUD, you'll immediately notice what makes this character so weird. The HUD boasts a massive number of meters, but almost all of them indicate important information. You see, Roxey is an RPG character. She starts at level 1 where she only has her jab and nair, and slowly unlocks the kit as she goes on. At level 5, her stats become hilariously strong. While she doesn't get strong attacks, she has every other move a normal character would have, alongside 5 extremely dangerous projectile attacks that charge really quickly. Her jab also is more non-standard, working like an auto combo in a more traditional fighter rather than a simple jab string. The last thing about Roxey is stamina. While she can use 2 to enhance forward special to make it a super strong spike, the real use of this lies in using one to be able to air dodge out of hit stun. While this may sound broken, and yeah, it kinda is, Roxey's health is fairly easy to dwindle down, and with none left, she crumbles and dies instantly. All in all, Roxey's essentially playing a different game from everyone else. She's a super fun casual character, but compared to a more traditional character, she's all over the place, with insane damage and brutal neutral at high levels, at the cost of basically no kill power outside of a few moves. But that's just my take for one of the weirdest Rivals characters. Let's see some of the characters that you mentioned. I tried to sort these from what I thought was the least crazy to who I think is the most crazy, so we're starting with a pretty well-known staple. A lot of games often feature a doppelganger character that steals moves and animations from the rest of the cast. Rivals Workshop has that too, but in this case it's a Suitcase. Yup, this bag of luggage contains a being knowing all of the secrets of Ether, and is able to mimic a huge variety of the game's most infamous moves, while being in a suitcase. But that's not what puts this character past the honorable mentions. You see, Suitcase is a fully fledged roguelike character. After gaining enough experience, you will level up, allowing you to either pick up an item or scrap it. These items slightly change your kit, and with several will massively alter your options and the way you play. Some extremely powerful items only show up in your run after completing an achievement during the match, like taunting or landing a weird move. I've done a ton of videos on this character if you'd like to learn more, because there's just an insane amount to this thing. But in general, the roguelike elements of this character provide an experience unlike any other, and I'd highly recommend checking them out. Another character I've talked about quite a bit on this channel is Chesspiece, and I agree with the comments that this character probably does deserve a spot here. In my RuberCuber Creator Spotlight, I did a much more detailed breakdown, but for those who haven't seen it, here's the gist. Chesspiece is an ever-changing character with base stats depending on what form it takes. Every single normal with the exception of Jab and Nair correspond to a piece, changing you into that piece and giving you that piece's properties. Pawns are all-rounders, rooks are fast but can't jump well, kings are slow and heavy, so on and so forth. Each piece also has its own special, allowing you to bust out heavy artillery like guns and missiles. On its own, this would be crazy enough, but you can actually have a second piece on screen, allowing you to switch to it at any time. It can also activate its specials even if you're not directly controlling it. This character is insane and has a crazy amount going on. While utterly bizarre, they're also one of my favorite characters ever. The icing on top of it all is you can even promote your pawn into a queen and gain a massive laser, which is just the final piece that perfects this absolute wild card of a character. Snom is perhaps one of the funniest character concepts ever. At first glance, Snom has nothing going for them. They're really slow, deal no damage, die really early, can barely jump, have no range. Essentially every problem you would think of on a traditionally bad character, Snom has. So naturally, Snom would be a terrible character, right? That's absolutely not the case here. Snom is deceptively an incredibly strong character with some absolutely game-breaking moves. Yes, Snom can't do most things that normal characters should be able to do, but in turn, can do things that normal characters shouldn't be able to do. The most tame of these is that while Snom can't jump, Snom's recovery is actually great, with a massive boost from down air and up special, neither of which have pratfall. Snom can also place a snow cloud in the air and ride it around, both as a movement tool and as a devious stall option. Snom can invalidate opponents trying to keep them out by using Mirror Coat, an install that consistently reflects all projectiles. Even if Snom gets hit, they can just heal it all off with Rest, and punish people trying to take advantage of the vulnerability with Sleep Talk or Snore. With all of these tools, Snom would still be a devious character, but nothing tops the power of Substitute. This teleport leaves behind a doll that when attacked, puts the attacker in parry stun and gives Snom temporary invincibility, as if Snom parried. Not only is this essentially an extended parry you can do in the air, but Snom can just attack it themselves, giving invincibility whenever they feel like it. Snom is an absurdly strong character and a force to be reckoned with, which really goes to show how looks can be deceiving. If there's one developer known for characters that fit the bill of being weird and wacky, it has to be ViviVinya. With all of her characters, she makes a goal of faithfully representing whatever her character is based off of. The thing is, a lot of these characters don't tend to immediately spring to mind as translating to a fighting game. One example of this is Venom SST from the Cruisin' USA games. Cars in fighting games aren't a new concept. After all, we have the Hornet from Fighters Megamix, an absolutely iconic character. But Hornet fights like a person, which is weird in its own right, but a car that fights like a car is even more out of place in some ways. For one, Venom is entirely based around movement. A lot of your attacks either move you around or force you to chase them for maximum potential. You can throw your passengers to fight, including a cow for some reason, allowing you to hold down the stage better. My favorite thing about Venom is just how much of a danger you are to yourself, as well as everyone else. You can build up Nitro for a turbo boost, which does a lot of damage, but when used in the wrong place, it's a trade at best. And that's not even mentioning the Strongs, all of which put you in a car crash. These have wild reach with some insane damage and kill power, but often send you flying and leave you completely vulnerable, if not dead. All in all, Venom is an absolutely wild character that becomes deadly in the right hands if you're able to get a handle on them. There is one more VV character I'd like to mention, as like I said, she's pretty much known for her bizarre characters. Perhaps one of the hardest genres to translate into a fighting game would be walking simulators, but she pulled it off with Lovely Sweet Dream. LSD, based on LSD Dream Emulator, is a character filled to the brim with outright bizarre moves. Summon projectiles, transforming into graffiti and sharks, a dash attack that hits behind you, you name it. But not only is this moveset weird on its own, the gimmick that ties this moveset together makes things all the more strange. A major aspect of LSD Dream Emulator is the dream graph that shows you what kind of dream you had based on what you encountered in the dream. LSD uses this concept in their gimmick, moving their dreams around the dream graph until it hits the edge. When close to a corner, LSD's moves will change form, gaining slightly different properties and becoming increasingly more bizarre in appearance. Once the graph hits the corner, it will become locked, granting you one of 4 powerful supers. These moves are incredibly good, often guaranteeing a kill. But the question is, how do you navigate the chart to get to those moves? I have no idea, and that's kind of the intent, just like the game it's based on. You're just going along with the flow and seeing what shows up. I wouldn't say LSD is a particularly strong character, but they're quite a fun time nonetheless. I know a lot of Vivi's translations of characters are pretty complex, so let's move on to a character that's more simple to understand. Maybe a bit too simple. This is Qua Mario, and the thing you need to know about Qua Mario is that this is Mario. And I don't mean Smash Mario or anything like that, I mean this is one-to-one New Super Mario Bros. Mario, with every mechanic intact. You can jump, roll, run, collect power-ups, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, this also comes with all of the drawbacks of Mario. You don't have a recovery of any kind, and you will die in 3 hits. You can keep a reserve power-up to get some extra hits, and you can even get extra lives with enough coins or a high enough combo, but that's very hard to make happen. That's not to say Qua Mario doesn't have some funny things that no other character can really do, like flying you off of the edge of the map or spin jumping on hitboxes to shield them, but the frailty of the character and, well, being a platform character in a fighting game kinda makes Mario more of a gimmick than anything. And you know what? That's great. It's always fun to see the limits of the engine pushed to allow for funny gimmicks like this. If you follow Workshop, some characters you probably expected to be here were the creepy traffic characters that have been a trend for quite some time. And yeah, you'd be right. A common design philosophy of these characters is to intentionally not tell you anything, become a mystery of a character that you slowly piece together into a functioning character. Take the original Mojibake, for example. Released all the way back in May 2020 as part of Psy's Character Jam, Mojibake very quickly gives the impression of a character where something is very wrong. A lot of your normals are super strange, like a down tilt that launches you into the air, and a dash attack that goes backwards. Your strongs all move in super bizarre ways that can catch opponents off guard, but you can't charge them. But you know what you can charge? Jab, of course. While simple in concept, Moji's gimmick is downright game-breaking at times. Moji's neutral and forward special will create a clone that stores the last attack Moji used before the clone was created. Then, they can switch to it at any time, repeating the attack. This opens up your options so much. Full screen strongs wherever you want, setting up a kill move near the top blast zone. Hell, you can literally fly if you want to. The possibilities are endless. But once you figure all that out, Moji still has a few surprises. The recovery allows you to clip through the floor and climb to wherever you want, which is probably still one of my favorite recoveries in the game. Lastly, the move that confuses everyone is this weird move where Moji appears to be screaming in anguish. If you try this out against a computer opponent, it will never work, which just adds to the mystery. That's because this move directly reads other players' controller inputs, and if they're holding the same attack that you input during the move's duration, they take a massive stun. It's like that one Mario Party minigame, but even more evil. All in all, Moji did everything they needed to do to set the standards for a crazy horror character. And then came Tamat, a very similar character to Mojibake. A lot of the moves between the two are very similar, albeit different enough to differentiate them. Both have chargeable jabs, unchargeable strongs, jumping down tilts, and powerful forward tilts. However, Tamat is much more bizarre in other ways. For starters, she has a Morrigan dash in a platform fighter, where she rises into the air while running. Interestingly, she's still counted as grounded and thusly can still do certain moves like strongs while airborne this way. The main appeal of this character comes in the form of static. Neutral Special launches a static person that bounces along the screen like some sort of possessed TV screensaver. She can use Up Special to teleport to this person at any time, allowing for some surprising movement at the cost of an unpredictable recovery. Whenever the person bounces, they leave behind static on the screen border. Tamat can then attack from these tears in reality with powerful tentacles. Obviously, it can be very hard to attack from the edge of the screen when it moves around, and that's where her biggest trump card comes in. Tamat can prevent the screen from moving at all, perfectly aligning the tentacles for prime carnage. Tamat is a destructive character with a lot of cool stuff. It's debatable which of the two is more bizarre, but the impact Moji and Tamat had is undeniable. Several other sign characters like Sejurak, Parkan, and Burmahara Jalela were made inspired by these. I could probably fill a whole video with these signs, but alas, I have to move on. Still though, if you'd like to hear me talk about the rest of them, let me know. We've only got a few left, and now we're getting into the territory of really chaotic characters. The last two we have are practically playing a different game half the time. Take Intellivision Man for example, a character where nearly every move is some sort of gimmick. Your forward tilt plays poker like a Game & Watch Judge Hammer. You can flood the stage with projectiles using down tilt and down special. You've got a ping pong ball you can throw around. There's a pinball launcher. You can become a shark. There's a flight simulator. You can become a dragon. B-17 bomber. There's not really an underlying gimmick here, but every move in the kit is in and of itself its own game. The point of the Intellivision Running Man is to be a proper representation of all of these proper Mattel Intellivision games, and it does that well. But the moveset is very much a collection of strange and chaotic attacks arranged in a way not dissimilar to Mr. Game & Watch. There's a lot going on. The character even comes with a transforming stage, the aether of which adds even more gimmicks. This is a fairly obscure character, so I'd recommend checking him out. But if you ask the community what the weirdest Rivals character is, believe it or not, there is a general consensus. Not because it's a super popular character that sees a lot of play, but because the character is so infamous that everyone has heard the name at least once. It's time we address Phasmophobia Ghost Hunter. When you boot up Phasmophobia Ghost Hunter in training mode, you'll be met with a nearly 20-page guide. This isn't tips and tricks on how to play the character effectively, no, this is what you need to understand the character. There's a lot to go over, but here's the basics. Phasmophobia Ghost Hunter does not function like a normal character. He does not have a recovery and has permanent super armor. To take him out, you have to lower his sanity to 0, in which he loses his super armor and is left completely vulnerable. His attacks are also pretty terrible, with awful movement to boot. In order to be able to take out the opponent, you have to collect evidence and go into hunt mode. Your up special allows you to select your gadgets on neutral, down, and forward special. Some of these are easy, but only give you a chance to acquire evidence. The more complex tools will always give you guaranteed evidence, but require more setup. As soon as 3 pieces of evidence are collected, you temporarily gain hunt mode, allowing you to control a phantom and add power to your attacks. This lasts a very short while normally, and is easy to stall out. However, the Ghost Hunter can gain achievements to extend the length of this form. Once it's over, it's back to the cycle of collecting evidence and getting hunt mode again. This character is super bizarre, and you genuinely aren't playing Rivals anymore when you pick him. But at the same time, there's something really charming about that. This character has a cult following, and I think that's just because of how interesting it is to put a spin on the game like this. You would never see a character like this in a retail game, and that's what modding is here for. And that's just a sampling of some of the wackiest characters the workshop has to offer. What do you think was the weirdest character? Is there any other characters you'd like to hear me talk about? Also, what do you think of this format? Let me know what you think. Until next time.